COVID's been rough. This year has been wild, and their family's going through all manner of challenges. You have the fires or the floods. It's been quite a time, and prioritizing supportive and healthy relationships with our family is, I think, really essential right now.
Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audrey. Here on the podcast, I share my experiences raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 16 to 26 and working with thousands more as a summer camp director over the past 3 decades. I'm the author of Happy Campers, and I frequently do workshops with parents, teachers, and summer camp professionals about social skills, connection, and happiness, topics I researched extensively for my master's in psychology. If you want tools for raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults, you've come to the right place. Hey, Sunshine Parenting listeners, and welcome to episode 160, which is first being released on Friday, October 9th, 2020. This week's One Simple Thing tip is to start or continue a daily family sharing practice. Those of you who've been loyal readers of my book or listeners to my podcast know that this is one of my favorite connection tips besides unplugging. And I've honed it over years of practice around campfires at summer camp and around my own family dinner table. So here's how daily family sharing works. Find a time each day. Dinner or bedtime are often good times to set up a consistent sharing practice, to spend just a few minutes sharing with each other. The only rules for your daily sharing are that one person speaks at a time and everyone else listens to the person speaking. Your kids may need a few reminders, as listening attentively is a skill most of us still need to work on. Your kids, especially if they are preteens or teenagers and you haven't done this before, may balk when you first bring up the idea of daily sharing and do it for the first time. Stay strong and stick with it. They will eventually learn to appreciate this daily sharing practice. Even if they continue balking, don't stop. Even if they don't show it on the outside, they will eventually come to appreciate a time each day when caring people listen to what they have to say. I'll post a link in the show notes for some ideas of what you can share during your daily family sharing practice. Highs and lows of the day is a popular one, but there are also other ideas like a question of the day, a kindness of the day, or 3 good things, which is an excellent gratitude exercise. If you enjoy the One Simple Thing tips I share here on my podcast and in my book, then you may be interested in the special PDF resource that is only for my Patreon members. For October, I'm putting together a compilation of my favorite One Simple Thing tips, because all of us could use some simple strategies right about now for creating a little more happiness and connection at home. Check the link in the show notes for more information about becoming part of the Sunshine Parenting Squad on Patreon. This week on the podcast, Sara Kuljis, one of my regular and longtime podcast guests, and I talk about the challenges of having young adults, high school and college age kids stuck at home during a season of their lives when they are most wanting to separate from us and be with their peers. We talk about how to better understand and cope with our young adult children's behavior, especially during COVID. Sara is the mother of 3 young adults, 2 college age and 1 high schooler. She's also a Gallup Strengths Coach and is the owner and director of Yosemite Sierra Summer Camp and Emerald Cove Day Camp. Sara offers popular parenting workshops in Southern California, including one that we do together called Raise Thriving Kids. I hope this conversation brings you some insight and encouragement if you are dealing with cranky young adults stuck at home during the COVID vortex. Enjoy this conversation with Sara. All right, we're back. Sara Kuljis is joining me again. Welcome, Sara.
Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me back.
Well, we have a really good topic that is applicable for anyone who is surviving COVID with older teens or college students at home. And I love the title you came up for this one, Sara. Cranky Young Adults: How to Survive with and Support Young Adults Trapped in the COVID Vortex. That's a good description of what we're talking about today. So, Sara, tell me about kind of your, how have you heard about this? What are you hearing people saying about what is going on with these young adults who are stuck at home with their parents?
Well, it really comes out of personal experience, but also watching so many friends and family and even summer staff members from summer camp who are trying to navigate this whole new world. And, for some young adults, older teens, college students, COVID has ended up being kind of a gift for them. They have needed to head home, and for some of them, it's been a more restful time, and they needed that. It's been a comforting time, and they've enjoyed being back home. So this isn't everybody's experience, but for so many, what they had expected out of this year hasn't turned out the way they want. And with not as much life experience as some of us adults, it feels like they are trapped and they are lost, and the world has crashed down on them. And so to see these young adults, great kids, really wrestling and struggling to be their best selves in this context, it has really grown to be an important topic. Even in my own home, I've got one college student who's was able to stay at school last year and is back at school this year. But I have another college student who was not able to stay and is back home for this time period. And so even to see between the two of them wrestling with their different experiences. I also have a high schooler who, like most, got to navigate online school, and they just started back in person now with the gifts and the curses of that. So it's been very personal to us. And I know in your own home, you've had kids coming and going.
Yes. And yeah, it's funny as you were saying that. I want to actually circle back afterwards about how that transition has gone, because I think that has been also a stressful thing for families who've, had to go back and forth or switch from online to live, and kind of all the adjustments that requires. So we have, similar to you, I have two college kids who went back to their college. It's at Boulder. And it's been an interesting thing because Boulder's having a lot of struggles with COVID and the young people. So they've have very strict laws right now and rules, and kids are getting fined if they are even the way my kids are describing it is even if you're walking outside with a roommate, you're in trouble. You literally, they don't want anyone out and about. So that's hard for them too. That's as hard as being stuck at home, if not worse, because if you're in a dorm, you're stuck in your dorm. So I have two that are back at Boulder in college, and that was basically they had already signed leases and everything else, and there was some question, and there was supposed to be some live, some online, and right now it's online for a while. Hopefully they'll go back to some live. Okay. And then I have my high schooler. And since he goes to a boarding school, it's been an interesting thing. They can't be as nimble about starting back up again. So I do not think, we don't expect that he'll be back until January at the earliest. So we know that he's just here now again, and he's a junior, and he, of all my kids, he's the one that I feel the worst for, because there's just the most loss, it seems like. All being with his friends, first of all, and then also the sports, which are such a big deal. He loves his sports, and not being able to play, and also knowing that this is not something that as an adult we can say, oh, well, I didn't get to go on this vacation this year, but we can go in a couple of years, or we can get it back. For these kids and that age, they won't get it back. So that's sad. That's a real loss that it's hard to even fathom because we didn't go through this at their age. So I think that's one thing that we need to remember through all this. Like, even though their behavior and their response might irritate us, I think really digging deep to that empathy of realizing how different it is for them going through this than it is for us as adults.
I agree. I agree. And we, as I have been watching the behavior and the responses of these young adults over the last 6 months, I really felt compelled to kind of remind myself of the developmental stages that these young adults are in, and like go back to the root, like how, why, and how is this young adult needing to behave this way? Where is this coming from? And it's great to realize and to remember that the developmental stages that these young adults are in um, are times where they are searching and ready and wired for autonomy and self-reliance and some new independence. It's an age of identity development, differentiating themselves from their parents, from who are they apart from family. It's a time of exploration and adventure, and also it's an important time to start developing a tribe, whether that's in high school or in college, and a tribe outside of just like activity friends. Friendships become peer friendships, become personal and supportive. They are thought friends, not just activity friends. And those opportunities to spend time, log hours with each other, to develop those relationships outside the family and the general community is so important. And COVID has, in many ways, robbed young adults of the opportunity to really lean into where they naturally are in their developmental stages. I know you did a lot of studying, Audrey, about individualization. What would you add to that kind of developmental perspective?
Well, I think it's hard as a parent. I've talked about this a lot with parents, is that, you have these children and you nurture them and you raise them. And really your goal is to make yourself, not necessary, which is a weird job, right? To like have a job that where the end goal is to not be needed anymore. And I think that a lot of us go through a time where it's a little painful. It's a painful, like, the process of our kids becoming their own people and exploring who they are without us. And oftentimes it's awkward because sometimes that comes out as them kind of going against our values or testing out some behaviors and things that we are, that upset us. But we have to recognize, and we have to step back, that not to take it personally, that that's normal to have that. And probably if we look back, all of us did it to some extent, where you test out, using words that aren't allowed at your house, or doing behaviors that your parents don't support, or making friends with people that your parents wouldn't agree with. I don't know. There's all these different ways that we do that. And I think parents really need to realize that this has been going on for all time. And if your child doesn't do that, it's actually a little bit of a problem, because they haven't then become their own person. And it needs to happen at some point. And we need to recognize that we have some ambivalence about our kids growing up and becoming their own people. We just really have to recognize that on the one hand, some of us, and I know I feel this way, like if all my kids are home for the holidays and they're all sleeping under my roof, I'm like, oh, everybody's here. I love them all being home. I know you feel the same way. It's like, it's a great feeling to be like having all the birdies back in the nest. And it's a little sad, like when, it was supposed to be happening, but it hasn't really happened. The empty nest thing. I know a lot of people struggle, like waking up in the morning and not having a kid to, have breakfast with or send off to school, can be sort of a big transition for parents to switch from being like in full on parenting here's my kids, this is my whole life, to, wow, they're all grown. And so I think that there's a lot of different things playing into this, and COVID has kind of messed up our normal dynamic for those of us whose kids are supposed to be, high schoolers are really supposed to be starting that autonomy and independence. It really needs to be starting younger. They need to be taking care of more things for themselves. They need to be, learning to drive, learning to do these things. Even the DMV was closed for a while. So people who were supposed to be getting their licenses weren't able to. So I think it's like on both sides, we have to really kind of do some adjusting and thinking about how this is impacting us and our families. And I think, what are some ways, Sara, that we can kind of make it through this time with our kids with our relationship still surviving? Like, what are some of your mindset shifts or strategies that can help parents just navigate this challenging time?
Well, you named a couple already, and I'd love to kind of go back and highlight those. You talked about the losses. And I think that parents can help honor losses. I think it's important to name what made me sad, what makes me frustrated, why do I feel angry? And not all young people know how to identify where those feelings are coming from. And so they kind of squirt out all over the place. But if we as parents can have conversations like, you seem really frustrated about not being able to play water polo right now. Tell me more about that. And really listen. So someone can say, yeah, I miss being in the weight room with the guys and doing strength training. And I miss the competition. And I was hoping to be the captain this year and it didn't work out. And that's not fair. And, as parents, sometimes we want to diminish our kids' pain. And so we can kind of try to put frosting on that and make it okay. Oh, but next year. Oh, but that's not that big of a deal. You'll play in college. Or, oh, it's just a sport. At least, you're healthy. That's not helpful when I'm holding a loss, to be able to empathize and say, that sounds so hard. I am so sorry that you lost that. Maybe they lost a graduation ceremony. Maybe they lost a prom. Maybe they lost getting their license in a timely fashion. I've got one of those. Maybe it's a loss of, I was hoping to live with that one roommate, or I thought my freshman year was going to be rushing a sorority at a university, and now I'm at home online and I don't know anyone in my classes. So feeling the loss with them, holding it with them, telling them that it's okay to feel yucky about those things. I think that that's a really important role that a parent can play, hold losses without judgment. Meantime, I think it's also important that we need to acknowledge our own losses, because my feelings can squirt out in inappropriate ways. I was sad we didn't get to have a graduation that we had hoped for you. I was sad we didn't get that vacation. I was sad I didn't get to drive you to college, or whatever, because we also need, I think, to be grounded in how we're doing, so that we have physical, emotional, and spiritual health as well. And then you also mentioned something super important, Audrey, and that is to, as best as we can, remember not to take their crankiness, their uncooperativeness, their irritability, maybe their silence, or their anger personally. It's hard not to feel like that's directed at us. And I actually had one conversation with one of my kids where it felt like it was personal, and I didn't respond in the patient way I would have hoped. I kind of reacted, and we rolled into a great conversation about how I started taking it personally, and I asked his forgiveness for that, and he kind of got his feet under him and said, oh, I know this is, you guys are providing a wonderful home for me. I'm just so disappointed not to be at school. So those two things, I think, help us keep our feet under us as we roll into some other ways that can be supportive. Do you have other things to add right now?
Well, as you were talking, I was just thinking about it's really the same kind of communication stuff that we need to be doing all the time with our kids, regardless of their age. So that whole validating thing, sometimes parents get wrong where, if our child is sad about something, even if it seems unimportant to us, we need to validate the feeling and not undermine, what they're going through. And so I loved how you just said to be able to just listen and say, yeah, that's really hard. Yeah, that's really disappointing that you didn't get to do that. And just be with them in there, like being with, that's the whole empathy thing. Like just, even if, we can't relate because we don't really care about prom or dorm or whatever, we can still empathize. And if we want our kids to keep talking to us about things, we can't diminish what's important to them, which is maybe different than what's important to us. So that resonated with me. And then I also think, it's funny, I don't know if that was the same for you, but I just remember, I think it's like 14-year-old boys generally just get kind of distant and surly. They go from being, your little kid, who, run up and hug you and, loves their mama especially, to sort of like grumpy and distant. I just know that from a lot of people that they're like, I don't know what happened, and that is a normal thing. Now we need to recognize that if it gets to some extreme thing where they're showing behaviors that are worrisome, like, their eating behavior or their sleeping is, suffering, then those kind of things could be more of a problem. But I think parents need to understand that is going to happen. Your child is going to, at some point, start exhibiting behaviors that you're like, wait, this isn't what you're like. Why are you being this way? Why aren't you talking to me as much? Why are you so quiet all of a sudden? And we have to understand that it's awkward for them too. They're navigating this separation, and it doesn't happen like they wake up one morning going, okay, I think I'm going to be my own person now, mom, so I'm going to be talking to you less. No, it comes out awkwardly. The other thing that I want to make sure we touch on, because you and I talked about this yesterday before we recorded, is how boys and girls show things differently. So with the already really kind of staggering statistics of anxiety and depression and suicide among adolescents, which is very worrisome even before the pandemic. We now have to be extra sensitive that this could exacerbate already going on things or cause some things. So talk a little bit about what you were telling me yesterday about what are we looking for, and what do we need to recognize about how sometimes things come out?
Well, thank you for circling back around that. We were talking about how unresolved or chronic stress or anxiousness can roll into depression over time, or exacerbate depression. And depression looks different for different people. A lot of girls or women will internalize and feel depression. They may be more self-critical. They may close down or become more internalized. They may retreat, but it's deep feeling. Whereas, and this is generalized, of course, where more boys and men will act out their depression. It comes out in irritability, anger, discontent, frustration, and an aggressiveness that we may mistake as being disrespectful or being a bad boy, when actually it's a cry for help. And again, when we listen, and help a child or a young adult identify, this is new behavior for you, and it doesn't seem like you. Where do you think it's coming from? Tell me more about that. And to help a young adult identify, you know what, I'm in a really dark place, or I don't know why I'm behaving this way. I just, it feels like the only place I can go. And we've talked about before about kind of the image of an iceberg. We're just seeing the top 10%, the symptoms of what's happening underneath. And this COVID season might be a season for some of us to be thoughtful and to kind of step back and look under the waters. And even reach out for some professional help if necessary. I'm so appreciative that so many counselors and therapists and even doctors are doing online meetings now because it's accessible. For some, it's less embarrassing, and to pull in some additional support for the kids who are experiencing anxiety or depression, potentially for the first time, or hitting a new level that really should be addressed.
Yeah. And, colleges, it's quite remarkable. Even if your child's online, colleges now have, many of them offer, a certain number or unlimited counseling sessions, and they can be very helpful during this time as well. Even if you're online, you can call them. And, most, and high schools too have either like a school psychologist or a counselor, and they're a great starting point for if you're looking at that. I want to circle back. I love the iceberg thing. I just keep thinking again, how all of these things we're talking about are applicable to parenting of kids at all ages, and how, Tina Payne Bryson and Dan Siegel they talk about being curious about our kids' behavior. So instead of like almost, it's really hard to separate because you take it so personally because it's your child. But if you're like, you and I work with other people's children a lot, right? So we take it less personally. Like if someone is having a behavioral situation at camp, we can look at it, not taking it personally, and say, wow, I wonder why, this child, has had this outburst. Where is that coming from? And we know that it's not that the child wanted to have an outburst in the middle of the activity. We know that there's something going on that child is trying to express and is not able to deal with without some help. So I think that being able to kind of think about ourselves as a little bit like scientists in our own home, and also just to allow some things to go by. I have to say that just like, if your child is being grouchy or responds in a way that's like irritates you because it sounds disrespectful, if you react right away and, and start saying like, oh, that tone of voice, blah, 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 which, it happens sometimes we'll do that. You've then shut down the opportunity to get under the surface thing. And that's what I think a lot of times we do that as people, whether it's with our children or in other relationships, we react to what was said or the eye roll or whatever it is. And then we've missed that opportunity to connect over something much more important, which, sometimes can lead to tears and like, oh my gosh, I'm just feeling so sad. Those conversations where you've had with someone where you're like, wow, that seemed really crazy. And then, it just like all of a sudden the emotions come out. I know that so many kids have a lot of feelings. A lot of them don't even know what they're feeling, and they need some help working through those. And it does come out awkwardly, but I know that for me, anytime that I've reacted to the surface, later I feel bad. Like I'm like, oh, why did I do that? I could have connected by saying, wow, you seem upset today. Is there anything I can help you with? Or, instead of just being like, wow, that was rude to me, and kind of personalizing it. So I don't know. I think that's just a really important point at kind of all stages of parenting and in relationships in general, that a lot of times we're not good at expressing what's really going on.
I agree. Absolutely. And it's one of the big gifts we as parents can give to our children to help them name their feelings. And from little kids all the way to big kids, all the way to much older adults even. You bring up a really important point, and I think it might even be the centerpiece of this conversation, and that is prioritizing the relationship. COVID's been rough. This year has been wild, and their families going through all manner of challenges. You have the fires or the floods. It's been quite a time, and prioritizing supportive and healthy relationships with our family is, I think, really essential right now. And so we as parents, for some of us, we may need to let go of some of the smaller battles or the smaller concerns. It's not about the GPA perhaps this semester or this year, it might be more important to focus on a healthy relationship and how to manage stress and how to be supportive. It's less about maybe doing all the chores perfectly and more about doing some projects together to be building a different kind of rapport with our young adults. As I think of authoritative parenting, that style that seems to be research says is the most effective, which is, high, clear boundaries and expectations and very high support. That high support can look like for these young adults, wow, I can tell it's really, really hard not to have agency or autonomy. Maybe you don't use those words. I bet you're feeling really squished in and not feeling like you have enough independence. What are some ways that we can help you feel more independent? Maybe letting your child loose on completely redecorating her room, paint, furniture, everything included, and you don't meddle, except maybe you hold the ladder when they're painting the ceiling, right? Or really allowing them to flush out their choices in voting coming up and not dictating or telling them what they should be believing or supporting. We've had great conversations this season about voting and what priorities are for each of our kids. Perhaps allowing them to research other activities that are available to them right now, because some things are closed down. I have one son who chose to take a leave this semester because everything was online, and that for his degree, the online component is less effective. And so we explored together 5 different avenues, and he chose to get an EMT certificate. And that feels good to be productive. It may slow down schooling a little bit, but not so much. And that gave him some autonomy and some growth and actually a little bit of adventure that he's been craving. So I think we can work with our kids to encourage some of those developmental stages, even though they don't look like we thought. And that's an incredible way to say, I trust you, I love you, I believe in you. You won't always be trapped at home. And how can I continue to help you be your best selves? As parents, we start as caregivers, and then they get a little older, and then we're their coach, and then we move into that consultant stage. And for a lot of these kids, we need to be waiting for them to come and say, hey, join me with this or give me some advice. And sometimes we want to go back to the coach stage, and we're giving so much direction and so much advice, but experience is a much better teacher than advice giving. And now's the time for us parents to be really creative in saying, how do we support their autonomy and their identity development? How can I help them find the adventure they're craving in healthy ways? And how can I listen?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So true. I was reminded of my conversation with Jim Burns. The subtitle of his book is Keep the Welcome. Yeah. Doing Life with Your Adult Children. Keep your mouth shut and the welcome mat out. And I think that, you have to figure out that balance. And even when we're thinking about our, kids who are 17, 18 years old, who are just on the cusp, I mean, they're about to be out on their own. So anyone who is at that age where they could be living on their own at college and without you supervising, advising, helping at all. When we think about that, it's a kind of a good mindset. You don't want to be treating your 17-year-old like they're a 7-year-old and saying the same kind of things, or you're first of all going to hurt the relationship, and you're not allowing them to do that growth that they need to get to that point. Oh my. Well, Sara, this has been really good. Are there any other points that we want to kind of share about this kind of navigating this time, or things that we want to encourage parents about in terms of working with, parenting your kind of older teen / young adult during this time?
Well, I think maybe to sum up everything is this is messy, but with thoughtfulness and with a real partnership with our young adults, I think we can, we can be okay. And we may just look back on this time and say, remember when those were some good days. We're not ready to say that yet with some of our kids, but we can help them remain hopeful. And hope is powerful. Hope feeds dreams. Hope supports, pulls us out of darkness, and finding ways to provide our kids with hope through supportiveness and through partnership, I think can be one of the big gifts we give our kids during this time.
Yeah. And I would also just add, I think many adults are going through hard things right now. And so I think we can also model for our kids in terms of if we need some counseling or some support to show them that it's okay to do that, and that it's, that lots of people are doing it right now. And so even something like that, like being open with our kids, like, whatever the loss that we've faced, some people have lost parents or, to the illness, or just going through, it's been a hard year for everybody to some degree, different levels of hardness, right? Loss for, career loss, death of family members. There's so many different things going on. So I think too, just being gentle with ourselves and not getting too upset about like the thing we said wrong to our kid or something like that. I think that we need to, yes, we need to repair things once we do things, but I think just to reassure people that we're all human and we're showing our kids real human experience. And when you go through challenging times is an opportunity to show kids both how sometimes you do it well and sometimes you don't, and how can we kind of get things back. And like you said, get out of this time, whenever it ends, with our relationships intact and the connection still there. If that's the only thing that happens, even if our children need to redo a grade of school or whatever other thing they need to, fix or do over again. I think a do-over is better than a complete rupture of a relationship, or just a terrible ending because of just such severe depression. So I just want to encourage people that everyone's going through a hard time. And even if people are posting happy photos, there's some strife going on inside homes everywhere right now. And we need to just realize that that's human nature when you're stuck together for a long time. And especially when kids who are meant to be out and about and spreading their wings have had their wings clipped.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. And we will come out of this. We will, but we got to do it together.
Well, this has been great, Sara. Thanks so much for suggesting this topic that is so important and so relevant to many of us right now. And I really enjoyed our chat, and we will, I'm sure, be back on other topics because as we've now learned, I've lost track of what week. I started at the beginning of COVID. Each week on the podcast, I would announce, okay, this is episode 130. It's week 9. I've completely lost track. We're now into the months. I think it's 8th month of whatever this is going on. But I think that this year, while very hard, has also brought up a lot of things that were going on anyway that need to be addressed. So let's just hope that the stuff above the iceberg is pointing us to deeper reflection and more time focused on the important stuff.
Oh, I so appreciate that. I really do. And I appreciate your wisdom to continue through your podcasts and your posts, continuing to focus on what's really important and kind of moving the fluff away. I think that's been healthy for me to be doing. And I really admire, Audrey, that you continue to point us to what's important.
It's because I need to keep reminding myself, Sara, all the time. As always, you can find notes, links, and other resources related to today's conversation by visiting my website at sunshine-parenting.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for my email list so that you don't miss out on any of the great resources I have available for raising thriving kids. If you enjoyed this episode and appreciate the podcast, there are a few ways that you can help me out. One is by sharing this episode with a friend who you think might enjoy it. Another way you can support Sunshine Parenting is by leaving a review on iTunes. Reviews are very important for helping podcasts find their audiences, and I would love your support in helping people find Sunshine Parenting. My favorite this week is a brand new book by one of my favorite parenting authors, Katie Hurley. Katie is a child and adolescent psychotherapist, parenting educator, public speaker, and writer. And I shared several episodes back about her amazing book, The Depression Workbook for Teens. But this week, I want to share with you an amazing new book called A Year of Positive Thinking for Teens. The subtitle is Daily Motivation to Beat Stress, Inspire Happiness, and Achieve Your Goals. This book is such an awesome gift book for teens and something that you can give to them that will just maybe inspire them to just flip it open and read very short little positive thoughts, including one like this one from October 5th. It's called Prioritize. It's up to you to prioritize what's important in your life. If you make your decisions based on pressure from classmates, friends, parents, or even teachers, you aren't being true to your own needs and goals. Your life is yours to live. Your dreams belong to you. Take the time to think about what you need to do to reach your goals and set your priorities from there. So there are posts like this, quick little things to read for each day of the year. They're very short and super inspirational. And to be honest, it's actually a year of positive thinking for all of us, not just teens. So pick up a copy and inspire yourself to think more positively, because we all know this is so important right now. I dedicated an entire chapter in my book, Happy Campers, to positivity and optimism and trying to create more positivity in our families and in ourselves. And this book is a great tool to do so. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to spend more time learning from and getting encouragement from Sara and me, I invite you to check out our Raise Thriving Kids course, where we will be covering strategies for growing the skills and character traits our kids need to thrive. The course includes 10 30-minute lessons, each covering one strategy, 2 live coaching calls with Sara and me, discussions and resources to improve your parenting and make your family life happier and more connected, and a PDF downloadable workbook full of parenting resources and activities. We'll be covering several different overarching themes, including creating the family culture you want, raising successful, thriving kids, building your positive parenting toolbox, and loving the child you have. Check out the link in the show notes for more information about the Raise Thriving Kids course. Let's end with a quote from my book, Happy Campers. Creating a close and connected family culture that promotes positive, lifelong relationships is the most important thing we can do for our children. Warm and supportive parent-child relationships, a sense of being loved, and help and support from family members serve as protective factors and increase children's resilience and their ability to face many of life's inevitable challenges. I'm Audrey Monkey. Thank you for joining me for the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. Join me again next week for more conversations about raising kids who become thriving adults.